thought twice. But they have no accountability. We don't have, the bias training that they're doing is not working, you guys. The de-escalating training is not working. So now, and even going to elected officials is not working. So now we have to do something to get these officers equipped with body cameras. It will stop the complaints that the officers have against them. And trust me, it's a lot. I can't even tell you how many because it's hard to count from the CCOP complaint, which is online. You can look it up. It'll tell you everything you need to know about what's going on in PGPD. One more thing I want to say. It's important that all of you, especially since you're Prince George's County, most of you are Prince George's County residents, to ask your elected officials, what's the problem with getting body-worn cameras on these police? If they're not doing nothing wrong, why can't they put them on? It will protect the community. It will protect the people that's in low-income communities that's being harassed daily. Y'all don't have a clue. Y'all have a clue how many mothers like me are in pain because of what the police are doing. And it's supposed to protect us. They are supposed to protect us. So tell me, how do we pay them to keep doing this to our community? I'm not going to hold y'all long. I want you guys to write your elected officials. Angela also works. Start with her. That's his boss. That's the chief boss. Start with her. She gets the funding for the county. Put it in the body cams. That's all we want. Body cams on every officer in Prince George's County. I'm not going to hold you because these officers right here, they gave up their life, you might as well say, to help protect us. They know the interactions of these cops. They work with them. IA, internal affairs, okay? Let's think. They work with them. They recommended things that did not happen on officers who do excessive force and sometimes deadly force. So I'm going to yield my time to them, but I implore you to write your elected officials and let them know we need body cams.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Joe Perez. I am a captain with the Prince George's County Police Department. I used to be in internal affairs until I opened my mouth and started complaining about wrongdoing against minority citizens. Right? And what I noticed was a trend. I noticed that we had white officers that would abuse our communities. They'd sweep it under the rug, they'd delete videos, and they even burn fires. And what I noticed was that it's a small handful of officers. We have 1,700 on the police department, it's 10%. It's always the same one, and we're always covering them. Meanwhile, you have a minority officer that wants to fit in and does the same thing that these bad officers are doing. They get caught, they get thrown right up under the bus. They got them on display. If you don't know, 15 officers from Prince George's County, known as the PGPD 15, filed a lawsuit against the Prince George's County Police Department. We also went to the Department of Justice and filed a civil rights complaint, and they accepted the complaint. So they are now investigating the Prince George's County Police Department. We try to get things fixed from the inside by pointing it out. But what happened is the department chose to defend racist officers as opposed to just correcting the problem. Angela also Brooks, she's complicit. Facts! She is complicit. And the reason I say that is that she spent so far on our lawsuit to defend a handful of races over $1 million. Over $1 million of taxpayer money. It's not insurance money to protect these bad officers. And the things that we're seeing is you know, we're seeing officers jump out on kids standing in front of their building. I mean, just because they're in front of their building. You know what? That's not protecting and serving. And you know, the problem is that, to include our politicians, they like heavy-handed policing. That's what they like. They think that that lowers crime, and that's BS. It doesn't. It really doesn't. You know, when was the last time that you've seen an officer get Officer of the Year or rewarded for community work? You don't see that. We don't see it. That's not what they want. And the problem is, and I'll wrap it up with this, is that from the inside, we try to bring it to their attention quietly so that we can fix it within. But instead, what they did was, whenever one of us reported something, they got terminated, they got charges against them, or something, or got transferred. We got transferred out of IA because we didn't like what we saw, you know? And the thing is that it takes the community. We're employees. They couldn't care less. If you only knew half of what we know, I mean, if you think some of these other places where, you know, Baltimore, the Freddie Gray, and Missouri, we're a lot worse than some of these places. We're just destroying evidence, and that's why we went to DOJ. But we need everyone to, you know, stand up in the community and talk to your elected officials. We need to vote these people out, because they're part of the system. And I'll say this, you know, the cameras are important, but we also have to hold these officers accountable when they get those cameras. Because if they're turning off cameras or not turning them on, that's a problem. And this administration is doing everything that they can to cover that stuff up.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sonia Zollicoffer. I'm a lieutenant with the Prince George's County Police Department. Bear with me because I do not have benefits. I came into the department in 2001 as a rookie. I was trained by a white MTO who sexually assaulted me. And when I reported it up to the top. And it was settled. However, that officer is still in this department. I was transferred, I've been an investigator since 2008. I transferred to internal affairs with, I must say, great experience when I went down there. But I was losing sleep at night because I witnessed where I call these officers repeat offenders. When they come in and they have the same charges, use of force, not having their videos on. So I charge him. I send it up, it comes back. Well, he was in fearful and safety. No, he wasn't. I watched the tape. But they don't want to hear from an African-American female to say, every young black man, brown, Hispanic coming here and making a complaint are not lying. Especially if they're coming in here complaining about the same officers. And our young black men, women write well. They can write that story and you're watching the tape and you see everything. I've witnessed where tape has been erased. I spoke up. I went to the top. I met with officials in Prince George's County police, officials, state's attorneys, everywhere, and told my story. Now I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm speaking up because I have grandchildren. I have sons that's a part of this community. I'm from this community. And when I go in and conduct an investigation, I tell everyone that comes in with a complaint, you write it, you fight it. Because if you don't, all you do is write a complaint and you don't answer the phone. When we come up on the door, I come like I'm your mama. Look, you wrote this complaint, you better tell me what happened. As long as you can tell me the truth, I got you. Because I know what's going on. I grew up in this area. I am from whatever they want to say, as they said before, I'm from the hood. Okay. But I know what to do when I'm conducting an investigation. And it's true. They don't have body cameras, but I've been the body camera in internal affairs. And I know what has been going on and is still going on. I've been transferred. I was actually kicked out to go work midnights in the same area where the officer sexually assaulted me. Wow. And I refused. Because this is nothing but retaliation, because we're speaking up on behalf of my community, our kids, and they don't care. But if you're in it, you're okay. I've never been in. I've never been in. And so now, I haven't been to work since April 2018. They don't want me in the department because they know I am the one that will speak up. Since I've been on this department, which is almost 19 years, tell everyone, you make a complaint, follow it through, write it, and fight it. Thank you. And I think that was really impactful, right? Hearing those stories firsthand. So it's not just hearing about data or theory, but the reality that people are living. And I think that ties into the next segment, what we want to talk about, which is state attorney, right? And the power of that office, and what does that mean? And so I'll be speaking on that section. And for me, I always tell people, when I'm a criminal justice advocate, but I tell people I'm an advocate for victims, period. Yeah. Right? Because a lot of times when you're a criminal justice advocate, they think that you don't care about victims, right? You don't care about people that have been assaulted or taken advantage of. I say, no, I care about victims, but I realize that there's people that are victims of other people, and then there are people that are victims of systems, people that are victims of institutions, and a lot of times no one's advocating for them. And the state attorney is supposed to be, they say the chief prosecutor. I say they're the chief advocate. But they're supposed to be the one advocating for victims, but realizing that you can be a victim of police brutality. You can be a victim because you were prosecuted and picked out just because you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And they have to realize and stand and advocate for those people as well. They can't just assume just anyone that has been brought to them with charges is guilty. And now it's just their job to lock them up, right? We need to move towards a more progressive system when we look at the Office of State's Attorney and their role. And so there was a report put out about what it means to be a prosecutor in the 21st century, right? What does it mean to be a progressive prosecutor? And these principles and ideas, I think, are a given, but sadly not, you don't see a lot of people practicing. So I want to go over what are those principles. And then you can tell me, are we asking for something unreasonable, right? Because a lot of times they want to say, well, advocates just want everyone, guilty or not, criminal or not, out on the street. No, we're asking for the fair and just system. That if you are black, brown, any minority group, immigrant, or poor, you're not treated differently. Like, that is the basic. Not saying that you're never held accountable, but it's fair. And so when they talk about those principles, they talk about how do they reduce incarceration, right? So they say, make diversion the rule. That seems pretty simple. So when you have people that are mentally ill, or they have an addiction problem, or chronically homeless, which means also chronically arrested, instead of locking them up in prison, you find a way to divert them on a different path. So the first rule isn't jail. The first rule is how do we find a program that helps them? Then they look at charging with restraint. Right? And so that's an example of that is there was a piece of legislation that the state was reviewing that would increase mandatory minimum sentencing. And if you weren't an advocate, you just heard it, it sounded reasonable. They're saying, okay, for people with second-time offenses with gun charges, that instead of the minimum being 20, it's 40, right? So an average person would say, okay, someone with a gun and they're caught twice with a gun, they get more time. I think that's fair. But here is the situation they didn't know. This legislation was the answer to Baltimore cop task force planting illegal guns on victims, right? So they arrested these officers, they're charging them because they've been caught planting guns on hundreds of people, right? There's 800 cases being reviewed for dismissal around actions like this. And so the solution to that is that, hey, if you're a second-time offender with a gun, we're going to give you 40 years after we just found police officers planting weapons on children.
They need to be charged.
And so I was telling people, make sure you read it in the context. First, clean up your own house before you have legislation to police other people in a way that gives them more time. And then when I went to testify, I said, because they said, well, a lot of people don't get the max. So this won't really affect a lot of people. I said, you're right, because all this legislation does is make a prosecutor's life easier. Because if you tell me, you give me 10 years or I'm facing 40, if you take this plea deal, who's not gonna take 10? So you're right, you're not gonna see a lot of people with 40. Because this makes it more likely that you will take a plea deal. Because who are you afraid that what jury is going to find you not guilty? Well, the weapon was there, but you know it's not yours. But when we talked about earlier, there's not body cameras, there's no proof that the weapon was planted, right? So then they talk about encouraging treatment. And so I look at this because right now we hear a lot about the opioid crisis, right? But we have to have that fair and conversation that's uncomfortable that there's been drug problems before opioids. The only difference is it wasn't people that look like me that were suffering from it, right? And so I have no problem for treatment for people that are suffering from opioid addiction as long as that includes crack, right? As long as that includes heroin, as long as that includes every other drug, not just the one that affects people that don't look like me, people that have more money. And so we have the conversation about that. And treating kids like kids, right? We have children, like in Maryland, there's a list of crimes that you can be charged as an adult. And so they have carjacking as one of them, right? So imagine kids jump in a car, maybe it's a relative, right? But technically stolen. Because the parent, they just want to get the child home, so they call and say, they took my car without permission. But they didn't pull a gun out on anyone, right? They didn't go steal someone's car, and the parent or the relative is just thinking, this will just help me get them home. Safe. But now, if they wanted to, they could charge them as an adult for carjacking. Right? And so we have to think about the law in a way of not just the way it's written, but the way it will be applied. Because a lot of laws sound good, but how they apply it differently to different groups is the problem. Not the law in itself, but the culture surrounding that law. They use it in a way to automatically incarcerate certain groups over others. Then minimize misdemeanors, right? So why do we have people sitting in jail for petty crime? There's an awesome organization like our Earlies that has this movement around bailing mothers out for Mother's Day. And I remember when we went to bail out a mother maybe 2 years ago or a year ago now, she was in jail for $50. $50. I spent more than $50 on a meal. And that was the difference between this mother going home or sitting in jail. And then there was another mother that they kept on changing the amount of bail, and they took it, she wouldn't have bail, and because the charges were what we call like padding, right, or a stretch. Again, what? To get a plea deal. And I said, well, let me make a phone call and just see if this person can help. It was someone that had been, running for office, and they were a lawyer, and I was like, maybe they'll know someone. So I called them. They made one phone call, and then she's home within a week. And what that told me, and he told me, well, she should have always been home because of a stipulation that was on her case. But if I had made a phone call, he had made a phone call, basically, if you don't know the right people, you're going to sit in jail when you can be at home. And so we bring that all back down to our state attorney, right? And what are we asking? We're asking you to be mindful when you're prosecuting. We're asking you to be mindful and keep the police accountable, so that means prosecuting them. And if they bring you certain cases and their body cameras are off, there's some prosecutors that we won't go after that case. You bring in a case and your body camera was off, you might as well just walk out the door. The prosecutor has so much power. They can make the decision on what bail they're going to set. They can make the decision on if they're going to prosecute. And what we need to ask is that they keep a standard that is fair and equitable. That is the only way we're going to have a fair criminal justice system. Is we're not asking for handouts, we're not asking for you to do something unreasonable, but if you do that for someone that lives across on the other side of the railroad tracks, then you do the same for us. That's it. And so I think it's really important that we're having this conversation, and then when we get into our breakout, we'll talk more about how are we going to hold these people accountable, how are we going to hold our state's attorney accountable, our police department accountable, and our educators accountable, because like they talked about earlier, there's things they're doing in the school system that is preparing our children for prison instead of preparing them for work. And so we need to make sure we're advocating on all those levels. So next we're going to have re-entry, right? So I don't know if you noticed the theme, but we're trying to look from the beginning to the end. So that's what we're talking about, education system. That's where it starts, preparing our generation for incarceration. Then we talk how they interact with the police. Then we talk about the state's attorney, right? Because that is the prosecuting arm, and that's kind of like your last defense before you're gonna lose a generation or your life into prison. But now we want to talk about re-entry. Because most of the time, those people are coming home. And if we want them never to go back, re-entry is a key part of that conversation. So I want to invite Kurt and LaShawn up to talk about it as well.
Thank you, Crystal. Okay, I am speaking somewhat unprepped, so I'll be brief, but I came home in 2012 after 15 years in prison. I live in Prince George's County. Because I live in Prince George's County, there are no halfway houses in Prince George's County. Therefore, I was in a halfway house in DC at Hope Village. Well, because I was in a DC halfway house, that meant that I had to reapply for papers, ID, what have you, to work. That took a considerable amount of time, and it also meant that I didn't have a job on the other end. So I came home with family, resources, connections, old friends, but I was unable to work, and I was unable to access the, DC has an Office of Returning Citizens. DC prisoners are able to take